The holographic reconstruction shudders, a billion points of light coalescing into a jagged, artificial mountain range of orbiting rock. At the center, the void begins to tear as a human flagship, a slab of pitted industrial steel, heaves itself out of the silence. Is this why the record ends? If you want to see the moment the galaxy learned to fear the quiet, subscribe to follow the reconstruction. Now, we'll look back at how the silence began. A week ago, the hardest decision I had faced was whether to prioritize the sensor recalibration or the structural harmonics of the outer ring. As a junior initiate of the Pentarch Circle, my world was defined by the steady, comforting pulse of the floor beneath my radial limbs. I am Vothan, and in my short years of service, I had never known a moment where the great rotation faltered. The Intelligence Center was a cathedral of light. 5 screens hung at perfect angles, mirroring the 5 arms of my people, each casting a soft bioluminescent glow across the polished floor. The atmosphere tasted of sharp, recycled ozone and the faint, metallic tang of cooling processes. It was a rhythm, a song of data. Then came the delivery from the Echo Collective. My counterpart, a Hythene elder whose blind eyes remained fixed on the ceiling, slid a data slug across the console. His leathery wings twitched in a way that suggested a deep, inner cold. He didn't speak. He simply waited for me to initialize the recovery of the human captain's log, designated as Object 92. I began the sequence. The data was old, salvaged from a wreck drifting on the edge of the Kessler Belt, a region of space so choked with high-velocity debris that no sane pilot would enter it. Humans, however, were not sane. They had weaponized the very concept of orbital debris, creating a cascading screen of shrapnel that served as a permanent, grinding shield for their inner colonies. I scrolled through the entries. Day 45 was a mundane report on fuel reserves. Day 46 detailed a minor dispute over synthetic rations. Day 48 opened with a hauntingly calm transmission. We'd apologize, but we'd need someone alive to apologize to. But Day 47 was gone. It wasn't just corrupted or damaged. The timestamp had been surgically excised from the core logic of the log, leaving a digital scar where 24 hours of history should have been. The Hythene elder finally spoke, his voice a dry rasp that bypassed my ears and settled in my bones. He asked if I felt the weight yet. I didn't understand. I rotated, my limbs clicking in a steady, unconscious tempo against the floor plates. I told him it was likely a technical glitch, a side effect of the Kessler Cascades interference. Look at the navigation telemetry. Child, he hissed. I ran the reconstruction again. The human fleet hadn't been hiding in that asteroid field. They had been waiting. The debris wasn't just a shield. It was a trap designed to lure the hegemony's pursuit craft into a localized gravitational well. As the simulation reached the temporal coordinates of the missing day, my motor systems began to lag. A strange, heavy sensation crept into my central nervous system. Continuing the rotation required a decision now. A conscious, straining effort of will that had been as natural as breathing only seconds ago. My limbs felt leaden, as if the gravity of the room had suddenly doubled, though the sensors insisted it remained at a standard 1G. Something about the void on that screen was pulling at me, which meant the readings were wrong. The humans hadn't just erased a day of their own history. They had erased the evidence of what they were capable of when they stopped being builders and started being survivors. Gemini said. The simulation turned violent. Hegemony cruisers, the bioluminescent jewels of the Pentarch fleet, were being stripped of their hulls in a matter of seconds. The Kessler Cascade wasn't just a belt of rocks. It was the jagged history of human industry, turned into millions of microscopic bullets. Every bolt, every shot of ancient solar panel, and every fragment of discarded satellite housing tore through our kinetic shielding as if it were parchment. Which meant the humans had planned for our arrival since before they had even left their own atmosphere. I watched as the hegemony flagship, the light of reason, attempted to pivot. Its rotation was beautiful, a perfect radial symmetry that matched our own biological grace. But the humans didn't care for grace. They cared for physics. A cloud of shrapnel, moving at 17,000 miles per hour, met the light of reason mid-turn. The simulation flickered red. The Hythene elder's breathing grew heavy, a wet, rhythmic clicking in the dark. He knew what was coming. We are witnessing the birth of a legend that should have stayed buried in the debris. Stay for the final reconstruction of Day 47. Behind the jagged curtain of the asteroid field, the void began to tear. This was a moment the logs had tried to hide. The human flagship, a bruised slab of industrial steel named the Vengeance of Gaia, heaved itself out of the silence. It didn't look like a ship of war. It looked like a tomb. And now, in the heart of the reconstruction, under the silence of two dying fleets, the truth of Day 47 finally emerged. The Vengeance didn't fire its primary cannons. It didn't need to. It simply sat there, at the center of the debris field it had spent centuries cultivating, and opened its broadside bays. They weren't launching missiles. They were launching more debris. Thousands of tons of pre-calculated shrapnel were being fed into the orbit, turning the space around the hegemony fleet into a blender that would never stop. A single transmission pulsed through the ozone-scented air of the intelligence center. Earth remembers. Earth always remembers. Then, a secondary signal followed, a burst of dark, human humor that seemed to mock the very idea of our survival. We'd apologize, but we'd need someone alive to apologize to. The simulation went white as the light of reason's reactor finally surrendered to the grit. Day 47 wasn't missing because the humans were ashamed. It was missing because there were no words in their language, or ours, for the systematic decision to turn an entire planetary orbit into a permanent, lethal graveyard just to spite a conqueror. They had committed planetary suicide to ensure we could never truly claim the prize. Horror! My rotation stopped. My 5 arms folded inward, pressing tight against my central eye as my bioluminescent patterns bled into a solid, panicked red. The death posture of my people felt like the only honest reaction to the data. 3 centuries later, the data slug for Log 92 sits in a vacuum-sealed case in the great archives of the Pentarch. Its surface is scarred, the digital signature still carrying the phantom static of the Kessler belt. We never went back to that system. The shrapnel is still there, spinning in a perfect, eternal circle around a world no one can touch. The log still skips exactly 1 day. If you were a human captain, would you have erased that day to save your soul, or to hide your teeth?